Voters will have the chance to approve the fire levy on June 4th, so Missoula firefighters will be able to continue doing their job in an efficient manner. From Nonstop Local News, I'm Taylor Richardson. After several months of fundraising and connecting with the community, MCPS will have enough funding to provide its student athletes with the chance to step up to the mound and represent its schools while enjoying America's pastime.
Tonight into the Bitterroot Valley, we're finding our Taylor Richardson a few miles from Stevensville along U.S. Highway 93. Taylor, good evening to you. What are you seeing right now as you're near the fire line?
Yeah, Ben, I'm just outside Stevensville right now. As you look behind me, this fire has blown up very, very quickly as we've had high winds pretty much as soon as I've gotten here. The mural is expected to be finished by August. In order for it to get done, it's time to get back to work. From Nonstop Local News, I'm Taylor Richardson. The project team has put together 3 concepts that could range from just doing the bare minimum restoration, which is the cheaper option, to adding more recreation opportunities along the corridor, which would be more expensive. Yeah, Colton, the vibes are absolutely immaculate here in downtown Missoula for a holiday on Higgins. As you can see, people are flooding the streets here and checking out all the different vendors here in downtown. While everyone is hustling to finish the course, it's now my turn to get my workout in. From Nonstop Local News, I'm Taylor Richardson.
Taylor, we've been looking at the video. We've been looking at the skies. We've seen the lightning. Now we look at the damage.
Yeah, absolutely. And just speaking of the damage, you can just see right behind me now, there's a tree that has fallen down from the storm last night that is completely covering this road right by Brantley Park here. And that just kind of shows you just a little bit of the example of the damage that's been done to Missoula area.
I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. It's horrible.
For many Native Americans living on a reservation in Montana, the burden of a loved one who is killed or has gone missing is way too common.
This goes back to like 1940. We have over 60-some cold cases here on a reservation. We have 3 people missing. Someone needs to step up.
According to the Montana Governor's Office, Native Americans make up about 7% of the state's population, but the same group accounts for 1/4 of the missing persons cases in the Treasure State. Some of the reasons why indigenous missing or murdered cases go cold is the lack of resources law enforcement has on the reservations and the little amount of DNA data from various tribes that could help match cases with unidentified human remains.
Due to a lot of the mistrust between Native American people and researchers, there isn't a whole lot of data out there that represents Native Americans. And so it is difficult when you're trying to match human remains to these databases because there's not a lot of that Native representation.
Haley Omiso grew up on the Blackfeet Reservation, and her former classmate, Ashley Loring Heavy Runner, went missing in 2017 and is yet to be found to this day. Since then, Omiso has gotten her master's in forensic anthropology and is working on getting her PhD in molecular anthropology at the University of Montana. She recently opened a company called Okomi Forensics and is beginning to create a DNA sample database for Indian reservations that the tribes can trust.
I'm really hoping to help bridge that gap between researchers and Native American people.
Many tribes oppose DNA analysis because traditional forensic techniques require taking bone samples that are then destroyed in the analysis. That is why Omiso is using a different DNA technique that can extract the DNA without damaging the bones, and then using a specialized kit that will link Native relatives in the database to unidentified human remains and possibly solve missing persons cases.
I definitely think that DNA can be very helpful and useful in a lot of these cases, and just making sure that we're going about it the right way and representing the DNA in the right way as well.
Omiso is hoping to eventually make a DNA sample database for all the tribes in Montana, but so far only the Blackfeet Reservation has agreed to the database. Omiso hopes that one day she can set up a forensics lab on the Blackfeet Reservation that will provide much-needed services to the Native American populations and hopefully bring light to these murdered and missing unsolved cases, not just in the Blackfeet, but all over Montana.
There's too many broken hearts here at a reservation, from murders, missing, and fentanyl overdose. We lost too many people.
From Nonstop Local News, I'm Taylor Richardson.
And of course, the road to recovery from something like drug addiction, it can be very lonely, very difficult for a lot of people, but it's not impossible.
Our Taylor Richardson joins us now to share an inspiring story about a man from Missoula named Stephen Ferguson who was able to break away from his addiction and start helping others recover from substance abuse.
This gas station on Russell Street is the one that Stephen robbed, which eventually got him put behind bars. While this place could have been where Stephen continued down a dark path of no return, it was actually the place where he began his road to recovery. Stephen Ferguson was your typical kid who grew up in an upper middle class home and got good grades in school. But in the 5th grade, Stephen's parents got divorced and his family lost their home to bankruptcy, putting him through a lot of anxiety, self-doubt, and depression. This led to him starting to drink alcohol and using drugs as a teenager to reduce the stress.
I started seeking that relief more and more, right? It was alcohol, it was marijuana, then it turned into cocaine, then I started selling marijuana, then I started selling cocaine, hallucinogens, everything.
Stephen's extensive drug use caused him to have a tumultuous relationship with his family growing up. His brother Jeffrey feared that Stephen would not be able to break away from this dark path.
You know, I thought for a long time that I was going to wake up one day and get that call. I didn't think my brother was going to survive.
In May 2012, Ferguson robbed a local gas station in Missoula to pay for more drugs. He was arrested for felony robbery on a 20-year sentence with 15 years suspended. He was given parole after 1.5 years behind bars. However, when he got out of prison, he relapsed and violated his conditions of his parole after a night out with friends. This led to a difficult conversation between him and his probation officer, who gave Stephen a second chance.
Basically, we had a handshake right there, and it was like, you will not see this from me again.
From that point on, Stephen was able to stay sober, and he went back to school to get his bachelor's degree and became a duly licensed clinician. He founded Crosswinds Recovery in 2019, which provides patients with sober living and addiction therapy. Stephen's experiences with drug addiction and being in prison have helped him connect on a deeper level with his clients who are going through the same issues that he did.
There are conversations that I can have with folks that would take weeks or months for someone else to achieve, and I can have them in that first moment with somebody, and I understand how people's minds think because I've been there.
Coincidentally, Crosswinds Recovery is just a few blocks away from the gas station on Russell Street that Stephen robbed. A full-circle journey of recovery for Stephen Ferguson. From Nonstop Local News, I'm Taylor Richardson.
Montanans all across the Treasure State have dealt with significant increases in property taxes. And the ones who may have been hit the hardest by this entire issue are individuals with fixed incomes. Our Taylor Richardson leads us off tonight. He spoke with local homeowners to see how rising property taxes are impacting them and their families.
Kathleen Kimball expected her retirement to be mostly focused on going to local concerts around Missoula and living comfortably with her husband in the house they've lived in since 1992. But their property tax bill jumped from $3,200 in 2018 to nearly $5,000 in 2023, putting them in financial distress that could make them lose their home several years down the road at this rate.
It just seems like intentional cruelty, and it really blows a hole in the concept of retirement.
Randy Kadish, who has lived in a condo in Missoula for the past 8 years and is on a fixed income, says that his condo reappraisal went from $130,000 to $244,000 and that his tax bill has increased by 300% in the past year.
You know, it's like every month I'm taking money out of my retirement fund, and it's caused me a lot of emotional stress.
The Missoula County Treasurer has been critical of the state for allowing this spike in property taxes, and he says this could have been prevented by the Montana legislature.
This was an opportunity for the state to take a leadership role in reducing the cost of home ownership, and they chose to go a different route.
In 2022, the Department of Revenue saw that Montana property reappraisals increased by 40 to 60% in some areas. This led to the department warning the state's legislatures ahead of their 2023 session that Montana property taxes were going to skyrocket and they needed to lower the state's mill rate in order for property taxes to stay the same. However, the mill rate was not lowered and Montanans have seen significant jumps in their property tax costs in 2023.
They raised taxes on homeowners by $250 million. $85 million went to the state, $140 million of it went to commercial properties. Only $25 million of it stayed locally. And it wasn't the county commissioners that raised your taxes. It was the state of Montana. It was the legislators.
To address this issue, the governor has launched a property tax task force, which will have its first meeting this month and will try to come up with recommendations to reform the property tax system. But as of right now, Montanans like Kathleen and Randy can only hope for change.
I've worked my whole life, and I'd like to keep my home. I'd like to stay here. Something has to give. Something has to change.
From Nonstop Local News, I'm Taylor Richardson.